Okay. All right. I think we'll go ahead and begin, and welcome to our district people who are here and everyone on the board. Tonight, we have Dale Hanson, Business Administrator, Terry Rhodes, Board Member, Jeff Nilsson, Board Member, Alan Grudy, Board Member, myself, Kathy Christiansen, Board Member, Roger Pulsifer, Board Member, Steve Norton, Superintendent, Randall Bagley, Board Member, and Larry Jepson, Board Member. And we will go ahead and have the pledge. Roger, did I have you do it right before I did it this last time? Okay, Superintendent, will you do it? Okay. The pledge and the mission statement.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Where is that?
It is right. Would you like me to say it?
Go ahead.
Okay, our mission is to educate students for success in a changing world. Do you think we have any public input, Dale? Okay.
Can
we'll
I
just
ask a
get-
question while we're on public input?
Yes.
Because it says public input guidelines, could we actually have guidelines there?
Oh,
So that people can read that when he puts it up? Like
on the,
the 3-minute limit, and you can't talk about personnel in this open meeting and things like that? You know what I'm saying?
I think we talked about that once, about having some guidelines on it, about putting the 3-minute thing. Maybe it was just Carolyn and I. Do you have any problem with putting some guidelines on the agenda or on the papers?
Both. No, it doesn't.
No problem with that at all.
Okay,
I think we were going to do that at one time.
okay. We will do it then. So what were some of them, Terry? 3-minute limit?
Well, I think it's important for people to know, especially if they haven't come to a meeting before, when they put their name on the paper, at least it should be in big, bold letters that they have a 3-minute limit.
Yeah.
Based on our experience in the last couple of times we've had public input, that they didn't realize.
Well, the last one actually did, because when I called him, I gave him the instruction that we had a 3-minute limit.
Oh, good.
So.
But they ought to know when they sign up that that's it, and that there will be a timer running.
Okay, all
And
right.
also no personnel.
No personnel discussions in an open
Okay,
meeting.
are those the only two things that would fit? Okay, thanks.
You don't need to put that on.
Okay. All right, welcome, Sean. I'm glad to have you here from the press. Okay, let's go ahead to our reports agenda, and we will go ahead and begin with Aurora on the overview of the district arts. And our screens are not working, so we have to look at the screen up here.
Get one, Nick. That's gonna be crooked if pretty nice.
You should be able to see it on your monitors. You don't have to keep your neck back behind you.
No,
Tim said it wasn't
no,
working.
working.
Uh-uh.
They're dead.
Well, I have the worst seat in the house.
You should be able to see, I think. I know you can see over me.
That's like sitting in the first row at the theater.
I've done that before. And it was just like this.
So should I use the microphone or?
Yes.
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 And just kind of step away from that computer, because that gives us a pretty good look at what you're putting up there.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Aurora Hughes-Villa, a District Arts Coordinator, and thank you for letting me be here tonight. So I just wanted to give a fairly short presentation on the arts in our district and just give you a little bit of an overview of what's been going on this year. and some programs that have been in place for a few years, but I'm just going to highlight them. And it was very difficult to choose what to focus on. There's so many wonderful things happening in our district. I'm not going to cover all of it in the arts today, but I'm going to try to highlight a few of them. Oh, by the way, you have a pamphlet in front of you just to, that will give you a visual of some of the arts in our district. So as you know, we've got a wonderful programs in the elementary all the way up to secondary in the visual arts, music, and theater, as well as dance. An area that I'd like to develop a little bit more is in dance. So I wanted to start with, we had a wonderful donation from Deloy and Lynette Hansen last year for $50,000 to help. It was earmarked for elementary music instruments, and we were able to purchase enough instruments for every elementary school to have about 15 Tabano drums, which are those drums on the right, and ukuleles for every classroom, about 15 for every classroom. We were able to purchase some parts to repair some of the instruments, the xylophones, and some of the ORF instruments that we have. And then I wanted to also just emphasize, we did implement the K-6 music curriculum this year, and so those new instruments were a wonderful tool to use for implementing the K-6 music curriculum. And then I had a lot of professional development this year, and I just wanted to highlight a few. We usually have about 4 workshops every year for elementary music specialists. Those are highly recommended that they attend, and we went over the Utah Fine Arts Standards, the new standards this year. We taught them how to write really meaningful lesson plans, use it as an opportunity to network with fellow art and music specialists. And we usually bring in different visiting artists to help with those workshops. We worked with Jim Solomon, who is a retired educator who did a drum workshop so that they know how to use their new instruments that they all received. We had a wonderful You Can Compose, a ukulele workshop where we brought in Jerry Crosby, who's an endowed chair over at SUU, and numerous other wonderful presenters. We also do a lot of additional workshops. Not only are we doing workshops for the elementary art and music specialists, but we provide a lot of after-school workshops for arts integration workshops. So those are for classroom teachers, maybe a first grade teacher, fifth grade teacher, who wants to learn how to integrate the arts into their classroom a little bit better. So we had a wonderful paper circuit workshop that taught teachers how to take simple circuitry with conductive tape and LEDs and make cards that light up. We've had a wonderful workshop at the Art Museum on campus at Utah State with printmaking with Lori Brink. So numerous arts integration workshops as well. Before I move to Arts Access, also in your pamphlet that I gave you, it also highlights Randall Beach did a very powerful professional development workshop for me this year for all the secondary music teachers about how to create a positive environment for your students. And we've also had some secondary art professional development as well. So the whole gamut. Also, we've been working with Arts Access, which is funded through the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Art Learning Program at Utah State University and the Kane College of the Arts. And I've been working with Raymond Vion to bring in more visiting artists into our schools and working with students with special needs. So this year, he actually helped fund, or the program funded, several artists to come to Mountainside, Heritage, I believe Summit Elementary as well. And you can see here just some of the pictures of the students working with the artwork, and then some of the projects were finalized in a legacy project for the schools. So the kind of artwork on the right bottom was installed in the library at Heritage. Some of the artwork at the left top is artwork that was displayed at the district-wide art celebration. So we're thrilled to have that wonderful partnership. And you may have heard about the Junior Chamber Orchestra, which is a 6th grade, 3rd year program, which has become very dear to my heart. We piloted it this year on the south end of town at the South Schools. And being that 6th grade was moving into the elementary school, we needed to figure out what to do with that 6th grade. Now that they can't take 6th grade in the middle school, we are now offering a pilot program this year that was very successful. 4 days a week, students could take orchestra in the morning before school starts with licensed music teachers. And many of them are some of our teachers in our district teaching middle school and high school orchestra. And it was very successful. I think we had an enrollment about 70 students that participated. A majority of the students that were in 5th grade, second year Mountain West String Academy Orchestra signed up and took the classes and were very happy. And we will be now moving into the North End and implementing it this upcoming year. So great program, happy parents, and have received lots of good feedback. Here's just a little highlight on some of the visiting artists that we had in our schools this year. I strongly believe in bringing people from the outside to come into our schools and teach teachers and teach students. So we've brought in Lisa Peterson, who did the paper circuit project so when we bring in an artist, a lot of times it's on grants that I write through the Utah Division of Arts and Museums or the Sorensen Legacy Foundation, and also through some partnerships with Utah State University, Beverly Taylor Sorensen Art Learning Program. When we bring these artists in, we try to use them as much as we can. So we have them do a teacher workshop, but we also during the day try to have them work in the schools. So we had Elisa Peterson do paper circuits with these wonderful 6th graders at Providence Elementary in River Heights. Jeff Mather came in for actually a residency for a week or two and worked with the life skills students at Heritage. Ryrie Woodbury Dance Company, they came in and worked with 3 schools and did a teacher workshop. Marquetta Johnson is an artist that worked with Spring Creek life skills students. And then Jim Solomon worked with students at Providence Elementary with drumming ensemble experiences. That's just a few. Another thing that we've been doing in the district is trying to show off all the amazing things that the students are doing with visual art. And we've set up a display or gallery in the district office near the superintendent's office. And monthly we try to rotate the gallery and show off some of the artwork in the elementary and secondary schools. And Art in Transit is now in its 6th year, and we'll be unveiling our high school bus wrap winner in 2 days at Summerfest. The bus will be on display. So Art in Transit we're calling it Art in Transit from Schools to Community, is a program where we're getting art made by students into public places, both on the outside and inside of the buses. So this year we were able to partner with Bear River Health Department and of course with CVTD with some other funding sources to get more art on the buses. So we were able to do these little paratransit buses and some runner-up students that didn't win they weren't the #1 winning design, but they were some runner-ups. They were able to get some of their designs on the outside of these small buses. And then Carter Ostermiller is the winning design that will be debuted in a couple days. But we also have artwork that's going inside the buses, and to get the artwork, you first have to have the students make them. So we have, every year, I usually choose a different school, and I write a grant from the Utah Division of Arts and Museums to bring in a visiting artist. We were able to bring in Therese Beasley from Salt Lake City. She's a watercolor artist, and she worked with students at Lincoln, 3rd graders, and they created landscapes, animals, self-portraits, houses, things that you would find in your community. And we just finished this yesterday. I worked with a graphic designer at Square One and put it all together into these bus placards that are about 11 by 22, and they just slide right into the buses, and they take up one side of the bus. And it makes the students feel like they are local celebrities because they get to see their artwork inside the buses. So here's an example of what you would see inside. So I'm going to show you if I can make it work. A video of Art in Transit. I don't hear volume, do you? We did earlier.
My name is Aurora Hughes Villa, and I'm the District Arts Coordinator for Cache County School District here in Logan, Utah. Art in Transit is a project that started in 2011, and it started with the idea of getting art made by children into public places. It's a way to empower the children, but also it's a way to really bring attention to the importance of arts education. The project's grown to not only include artwork by children inside the buses, but also on the outside.
And what biome is this? Oh, desert.
To support a program that develops creativity in youth, I think is huge, not only as the transit district and schools, but as a community.
I didn't know it was going to be like some smaller and some like different sizes.
But all that variation kind of makes people want to look at it further.
The art emphasizes and reinforces all the things that they're learning and actually makes it a little more exciting than if you're just doing it with the textbook.
They worked with a visiting artist. Her name was Sherry Meidel.
Hey, and I wanted to thank you guys for all those thank you cards. I read each one of them. They were studying Native Americans, so I thought I would try to walk them through some portraits. We talked about some of the experiences of some of the Native Americans and then brought that in with the portraits.
The kids really benefited from seeing a professional artist, and a lot of them were very impressed by that and just really connected with her because she has that professional experience.
She kind of gave us some details of how they look and what colors we should use, but then she said we can really use what any color we want, and it was really fun.
Some kids sometimes don't really know much about art, and this is like a way with that they can learn about people with art and have fun with it.
She really helped us thinking like we can't draw good things and it doesn't matter what other people's look like. I've seen all crazy kinds of arts, but actually to see like how they go through it, it's cool.
Art is a way of communicating, and when kids make art, it's very easy to connect with them and talk with them. You get to decide, this is your piece of artwork, you can choose how you want this to look.
Lots of other people will be able to see our art. Like when they come on the bus, they'll see the other things that children can do even at younger ages.
By working on an art and transit project, they create the sense of community amongst themselves in the school because they know that this is really special. We're a part of something really special.
Kids, I believe, actually have more answers to the problems that we deal with, and art is one way that gets them really creative.
I think in the long term, I think that the exposure to the arts and seeing that academics is not just about academics, but academics is included in all the things that you do.
The kids were amazing. They did a really good job.
And it's these types of experiences, meeting a real professional artist gets to teach you her techniques. I mean, those are the things that they'll walk away and remember and carry with them.
Art in Transit!
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Thank you, boys and girls.
Okay, I thought seeing a video would give you a better sense of what Art in Transit is all about. A project very passionate and dear to my, I'm very passionate about, and it means a lot to me in the school district. So the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts Learning Program, I just wanted to point out that has been a wonderful funding source for us to provide licensed art and music specialists in our classrooms. So we have a paraprofessional model, paraprofessional arts and music specialists in our classrooms, where this state legislatively funded grant allows us to hire licensed art and music teachers and dance and theater, if that is what we wanted to do. So over the last couple of years, 3 years, we now have 11 visual artists, 3 music specialists, and 1 music instructional coach, and that makes 14 out of our 17 schools that have license or on their way to getting licensed. Some of them are going through an ARL program. And we've received about $350,000 of grant funding to pay for the 80% of the licensed teacher's salary. And the program is, the main emphasis on it is, one, to have licensed teachers in the classrooms teaching art and music, but also to integrate the arts with the core subjects. So many of the projects that you will see as you walk through the elementary schools on the walls and in the classrooms are a partnership or collaboration between classroom teachers and the art specialists, creating projects that are integrating maybe social studies with art or music and science So this has been a wonderful program in our district. And the district-wide art celebration, we had our third annual district-wide art celebration, and this year we tried a new location at Ridgeline High School, and it was a wonderful space to showcase about 25 different music performances by elementary and secondary music, drama, dance students. We had about 500 artworks on display from every elementary school, middle school, and high school. And the art and transit buses were there as well, and art activities. And here's a short video of the night. So there were some clips in there from last year's district-wide art show, but Mason Johnson, our local videographer, helped me put that together so we could apply for more grants and get more funding for future projects. And then I just wanted to end with spotlighting some of the secondary arts programs and awards and recognitions that students have received. I put this, I recently received an email that Dave Swenson sent over to me, emphasizing how wonderful Karen Toucher is, and her choir at state, I believe it was at the state competition, had excellent scores. And I just wanted to, on the back page of this pamphlet, I just listed some of the other wonderful accolades that some of our students have received. Unfortunately, I didn't have an opportunity to bring all the students and introduce them and show them off tonight or other evenings. I'd like to try to do that in the future. But there's, our music programs, our art programs, drama. We've just had wonderful students that have received lots of awards this year, including some of our art teachers have received some awards. So you can look at that one later. But I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity, and I've had the chance this year to really make a point to go into as many classrooms as I can, art, music, secondary, elementary, go to as many performances as I can. And I've probably gone to about 20 to 25 music and art performances over the year, from folk dancing at Mountainside to guitar concert at Mountain Crest to Spring Creek Art Show. And it's been wonderful to see when you go out there and you see what these teachers are doing and what the students are doing. It's been pretty amazing, and I feel very fortunate to be in this role. So thank you.
Thank you, Aurora. That's awesome. It's great to see the arts so prominent in our district, and I am very biased towards students being able to participate in the arts from kindergarten up through their senior year in one way or another. I firmly believe that, the athletics helps to develop the students physically, the academic classes, develops their mind, but it really is the arts that helps to make them human. And every child should have an opportunity of some sort to participate in the arts. Does anyone else have any comments?
Just very well done, yeah.
Exciting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aurora.
One of the great investments we ever made was bringing her on board into our district, and grateful to have all that she's introduced to our district in the arts. Been wonderful.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurora.
Okay, we'll move on then to the negotiations agreements with CEA, the classified employees and administrator groups, and Kirk McCray will present that.
Dale, give us some light.
You want some light? Is that what you're saying? The mood's better like this. Yeah, I don't have anything on my power presentation, but I do have to present to our school board tonight the results of our employee negotiations for the upcoming school year. And I want to thank the board for their support in getting our agreements in place. And I will say that these agreements are tentative until approved by the school board, but each of the employee groups have ratified their tentative agreements at this point. So there's a lot of similarities between the agreements, and so I'm going to just start with the teacher agreement. Is that the first one in your packet? No?
No, the administrators.
Administrators, okay. Well, if you can turn to the teacher one, there's a couple things that are a little unique there that I want to highlight. But let me just give you the basis of all the salary and benefit changes. With the great budget year, the 4% WPU increase from the legislature, growth, and our voted and board leeways, and meeting all of our other priorities, the district is recommending a 5% cost of living adjustment for all our employee groups. And that is a sizable increase, and we're grateful for that. With our teachers, we had another priority, and that was to increase our beginning teacher pay. And working with our business office and with our teacher group, we felt like the best way to do that was to basically collapse steps 1 through 5 on the teacher salary schedule so that a beginning teacher right out of the university would, in essence, start on step 5 of that schedule. And it would be frozen, meaning they wouldn't get any step increases for those first 5 years, but they would be at that higher rate right from the beginning. And so by doing that, it has our starting teachers at $40,700 next year, which is between a $6,000 and $7,000 increase from last year. If you followed the news, you'll see that the districts in Salt Lake Valley and then Park City had to lead the way. But there is a teacher shortage that we're experiencing, and we feel like we need to do whatever we can to compete for those new teachers. And at our mid-career and in-career teachers, we feel like our salary schedule competes very well, but the beginning teacher portion of that schedule was a little low, and this addresses that in a productive way.
So Kirk, pardon me, is that similar to what's happening in other districts then with the collapsing of?
I don't know that other districts have collapsed their salary schedule. Some districts have gone to a single lane salary schedule. Logan has done that. Davis, I think Jordan went to that. And it's a different approach to trying to increase that beginning pay. I don't think that it's beneficial for the mid-year and in career. So we don't feel that's the right approach for us. So I think every district has tried to do it a little bit differently. But we felt like this was a good year to take advantage of the good budget conditions and to increase that. So I don't know. As far as I'm aware, I don't know that there is any other district that has done it exactly this way, but the end results are similar to what we are achieving with this.
Okay, so pardon my ignorance, how will we be able to see, I mean, if we're in this bidding war, as it were, for people, how will we know our success with this strategy? I mean, it sounds good to me. I just don't know what.
Yeah, and there's more factors than just pay that goes into that
Sure.
decision. I think that having Utah State close by, being in a place that is desirable to come and live and to raise a family. This negotiation wasn't complete by the time that we had hired probably half of our hires for the next year. And that wasn't, it's always a point of concern and a question that new hires have. But I think that we'll see it next year and the years following. I think that will be more of a factor that they'll weigh. Other districts were in the same process of trying to establish their budgets for next year. Now, I'm very happy when I'm able to talk to a new teacher and say, by the way, this is the salary schedule that we've proposed to our school board, and they are very pleasantly surprised. And I think that as this continues to develop in the state, it will put us in a very good position. I think in northern Utah, we will be in very good position to compete. If we were competing with all the other districts in Salt Lake, it would be a little more difficult. But a lot of our candidates, they're either coming here or wanting to stay here for reasons.
Quality of life, the
Quality of life.
intangibles, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I think that helps with our retention rates as well, but to the extent that we can reinforce that economically, I think it's always in our benefit to do that.
No, it looks good to me. I just was curious on the strategy, so.
Yeah, and Dale and the superintendent, I give them a lot of credit in coming up with the numbers and the approach here, and trying to persuade our teachers. A lot of them are veterans that wouldn't get the advantage of this collapse. They came along and they supported us without any reservations at the end, but that's always a bit of a challenge because it does take a little money off the table for other things when we do something like that. But they were very supportive, and part of the reason that made it easier to accept that is the 5% increase. That's a large COLA increase, and even with that collapsing of that salary schedule, we were still able to provide that 5%, which is 2 years ago we had a 5.1%. Last year we were at 2.75. So this, I mean, the economy is strong, and the legislature is making education a priority, and we're benefiting from that. On our health insurance benefit, which is another big part of our negotiation process, last year we made the transition to go from a fully insured health insurance plan to self-funded. And I think that still was the right choice. Because we're self-funded, we don't go out to the carrier and ask them for what our renewal is. Rather, we work with them to come up with a funding level that we think would be appropriate to meet the needs as we go into the next school year. And we were given a range by our consultant and by the carrier of a -3% to an 8% increase. And we felt like we wanted to be a little more conservative. We felt like a 5% funding increase was appropriate there. And so without any planned decrements or reductions, we were also able to fund that 5% increase, and we'll have the same plans in place for next year. And we do have high deductibles and high out-of-pocket. That's the result of lots of other factors in the healthcare market, but our employees won't pay more. We will pay more, but we'll cover that 5% increase in that funding. Some of our employees that do pay part or partial premiums will also have that 5% increase as well. Another big part of our compensation is the step and lane schedule, and that is a negotiated item. It's not an automatic pay increase. It does cost new money to fund that each year. And across the board, with all of our employee groups, we are recommending to fund those lane and step increases. I think with our classified employees on the salary side, we made a couple of minor changes in the bus driver and child nutrition pay scale. Both of those departments are funded on their own revenues, and both made the recommendation to make those slight changes. And that is, again, market conditions that are making it harder to go out and hire in some of those positions. And so we made a minor tweak there on the classified salary schedule, but otherwise it's the same benefit and COLA increases across the board. We also made a change in the retirement notification deadline across the board. This past year and years past, the first notification on retirement has been March 20th, and then the final April 20th. And again, to try to make sure that we're planning for the following year, we accelerated that by a month, and so now the notices will be February 20th and March 20th. It's a minor change, but again, that's something that's negotiated. And then because of the unexpected snow days that we had this year, all of our employee groups wanted not necessarily any policy changes, but just a common understanding as to how we're going to handle snow days if they happen in the future. And so in each of those groups, we do have a memorandum of understanding regarding snow day expectations. And essentially that is, we're gonna designate snow days on our calendar, which we've done for next year. And those will be the first 2 days in the spring break. And that if there's a snow day cancellation, that's where we'll make it up. The other part of that is that we will make a good faith effort to notify students, staff, community by 6 a.m. Of each day. And with the reformatting on the north end, our school starting times are going to be later across the board, which is also helpful here. And so we're advising all of our teams and extracurriculars that if they do have a team activity, to not have any students there prior to 6:30 a.m. And so if we do have a cancellation, we don't have students that are stuck going to school and then finding out later. So that's all that the snow day expectation is just trying to make sure that we're prepared if that happens again, which may not be for another 15 years, or who knows. And I think those are the main components of the negotiations. And you've got them there for your review. Are there any questions that you have, or?
I have a question, but it has nothing to do with the employees. How will the parents know that those 2 days for spring break are snow days? Because they plan their vacations.
They do, and I'm sure they're going to,
will.
regardless of what we designate. And I think on our website, on all of our calendar information for next year, we've tried to highlight that. We'll also talk with our administrators and make sure that they communicate with their school communities as well. That has been kind of an unspoken reality, but it became so unspoken that this year we really were caught off guard. And so we're going to make sure that we're more deliberate in those communications.
Okay, I just see that kind of as a trouble spot.
It is, and no matter what you do, you're going to probably upset someone and their plans, but we'll try to be a little more transparent in communicating that.
Kirk, let's make sure we get that into PTA newsletters that go home and all those kinds of things, especially starting December.
Yep, I agree.
That just goes home and we emphasize that.
Is there any way that the teachers can put it in their syllabus at the beginning of the year? Although a lot of parents never read those.
Yeah.
But maybe it should be the first thing before.
And I'm sure there is, and I would say probably, especially for the secondary schools, you know, starting second trimester, just communicating that. But we'll do what we can to emphasize that and cross our fingers that it's a moot issue, but who knows?
Put a banner at each of our secondary schools starting the second trimester. Remember.
Yeah. Don't go to Disneyland on these dates.
Okay, are there any questions or comments?
I have a couple. So my first question is on the classified employees agreement, it lists sick leave bank.
Yeah.
Do the teachers not have one of those?
The teachers do have a sick leave bank, and thank you for pointing that out. Yes, the teachers and the classified, I should say, they are recommending that we change that classified term to cash educational support professionals.
Oh, yes.
And so over time, we'll try to adjust to that. But yes, our classified do have a sick leave bank, and our teachers do. The teachers' sick leave bank is optional. It's an opt-in. The classified is an opt-out. So that means if you are a full-time classified employee, unless you take an affirmative step to opt out, you will be part of the bank. And the teachers, it's just the opposite. And they function differently. One of the changes that the teachers made about 5 or 6 years ago was that leave didn't have to be consecutive. It was cumulative, not consecutive. The classified looked at that and felt like they wanted to make that change as well. And so they did make some recommended changes, and again, that's in your packet. The changes that they were proposing are in the red text, but it is a separate bank, separate draw that our business office does for those employees, and a separate committee that looks at those requests and makes those recommendations.
Okay. I assumed that there were changes in the support professionals, but not in the teachers, and that's
Correct.
why we saw it there, but not in teachers.
Yeah,
But I
and-
had to ask.
Correct, and you would have seen those changes in the teachers, like I said, 5 or 6 years ago, but not since, and no changes this year to their sick leave bank program.
My other question is back on the new teacher salary schedule. So what happens to the teachers who are 5 years or less currently?
They will
They'll
jump up to
the
that,
fiver?
the equivalent of step 5 on whatever lane that they're on. So if they were, let's say, a second-year teacher with us this year, next year they'll be third, they will still be on step 3 next year, meaning they'll be able to advance past step 5 in 2 years rather than in 5 years. So they will be in the same salary band as a beginning teacher, but we'll keep track of them on steps so that they will advance in their career appropriately once they hit step 6. Dale?
Yeah, like I say, really steps 1 through 4 are not going to disappear. They're not going to collapse into 5 literally. They'll still be in place, but they will mirror the same dollar amounts that are on step 5. They'll just be that same amount on
Yeah.
So they'll continue to advance a step each year, but the dollar amount will still be the same on those, except for any cost of living.
Yeah, collapse maybe not the right term, maybe mirroring step 5, but we will still track them separately to see which year they are within the district
Okay.
for future steps.
Yeah, you can see that on the draft of this new salary schedule, that they're all the same. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So those teachers on second, third, fourth, they're going to get a good pay raise this year?
Oh, yes,
They'll
yes,
be right up
substantial,
there.
more
Right.
than 5%, yes. And, you know, the biggest pay increase will be for that teacher that we didn't have with us, the one that just graduated on step 1, and they won't probably fully appreciate that,
Right.
but we will emphasize that, and I can tell you that all the ones that have seen that difference are very appreciative.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Kirk, I just wanted to say thank you to you and Dale and Steve for making it not an adversarial negotiations, but a cooperative negotiations. It's been so nice the last several years.
It has.
Thank you very,
Well,
very much.
And thank you and Roger for your help. We do have a very good working relationship with our associations, and we really appreciate that.
You know, it didn't used to be like that all the
No.
time, and so thanks for making that effort.
Yeah, well, thank you, thank you.
And I think the teachers are very appreciative also, from what I've heard.
Yep, I think all of our employees are, so thank you.
This was my first year sitting in on the negotiations, and I was there for a couple of meetings, and it was just really interesting and fun to see how everybody cooperated and worked together, and how well you opened it up to their suggestions, and then at the next meeting, brought things back with their suggestions added, so thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you. And I can tell you, if it was 10 or 12 years ago, it would have been, I don't know, 5, 10.
Interesting, but not
15,
fun.
15 meetings with not a lot of production there, so thank you. Yeah.
Okay, all right, we'll go ahead and
Okay.
move on then. Thank you
Okay,
very
thanks.
much. Student assessment discussion, and that will be Kurt.
Hello, everyone. So I guess I'm the next two on the agenda. So the superintendent wanted me to talk to you about some questions you might have had on student assessment. And then later, when we get to the evaluation piece, I would just like your consideration for a policy change that we can talk about at that point. So a couple of questions I think that came up, and then if you have questions for me, you can just ask me. But what are some of the assessments that we have in our district? I think that was a question. So for our formative assessments, we use classroom assessments, of course.
Will you explain formative and
Yes,
summative
okay.
for those who haven't taught
Sure.
before?
Yeah, so we have formative and summative, and formative just is used to determine where kids are and how we can get them to the end, where we want them to be. And the summative is the end. That closes the books on the assessment. So classroom assessments would be formative, but SAGE assessments are summative. We can't make any changes in instruction after the summative assessment is given. So some of the formatives we have, we do the classroom assessments, and in our elementary, we use SRI for reading comprehension. That's in grades 1 through 6. Those are pretty much our formative assessments. In summative, we use DIBELS, which is also formative. It's formative in that it helps us improve instruction throughout the year, but it's also used summatively by the state to provide funding for our districts. So we also have SAGE. We just completed our SAGE assessment, and we did really well. I've already been contacted by other districts wanting to know how we did it again, another year. We haven't received all of our data. It's still preliminary, and we're still waiting for growth scores, which won't be back until around September, mid-September. We do have a landscape change in assessment for next year, however, and that does affect SAGE. SAGE will be one more year, generally, for the district before the state implements a new program by law that they do that. But the biggest change comes at our high school level. High schoolers will no longer be taking SAGE assessment. Instead, they'll be taking the ACT like they've done in the past at 11th grade, and then 9th and 10th grade will be the ACT Aspire, so it's college readiness assessment that's given to 9th and 10th grade students. They're looking to derive growth from that. I'm not sure how that looks, only because the Aspire, the 9th and 10th grade assessment is the same assessment, except there's an A version and a B version on it. So we'll see how that works. But because of SAGE, because we won't have SAGE, SAGE is something we use to see our success in our curriculum. And ACT is used for college readiness. So there is a disconnect on that. And we know that. We all are aware of those changes. And so that's something that we want to be aware of and see how we can assist our teachers in seeing how kids are with our curriculum, not just college ready.
Kirk,
Some other...
Let me just interrupt right there.
Sure.
Where are we going to get a baseline from?
On ACT?
Well...
Or high school?
High school, you know. I mean, with the SAGE, at least we have a baseline.
Exactly.
That we can go from. And
Right.
where's this new baseline going to come from?
You know, that's a discussion that we've been having. Robin and I have been talking about, you know, we're looking at implementing benchmark assessments.
Okay.
Part of what we're doing this year in the middle school in that digital teaching and learning grant is we've purchased a program that lets us embed some formative assessments. So we're working on that for the next few years with that grant and seeing what the possibilities of that would be for our high school classes in the future, and then working on developing benchmark skills based on our curriculum, and then implementing those within the classroom.
Okay, when SAGE goes away, is it next year, after next year?
It will go away in name. There will be something to replace it.
So that we can still have a baseline in those lower grades.
The K through 8 won't, or the, 3 through 8 won't change, other than the name of SAGE, the provider will change. Does that make sense?
It just seems like that, at least from an educational standpoint, that every other year we're trying to come up with something new. And I know it's not you, and I know it's not the district, I know it's a state, but we need some consistency.
Yeah, right. I agree with that. And hopefully as we develop some benchmarks, it will not only benchmarks for math and science, but also benchmarks for social studies and health. That's what we're looking at, to be helpful to the teachers so they can see where their students are. So that's what we're looking at for the future. Additional summative tests are the DLM, that's the life skills assessment, and WIDA, which is for developing language students. And I think another question was whether it was adequate, and I think, Alan, that probably answered your question. I don't think we have adequate assessments because we don't have assessments in all subject areas, but if we can start building some benchmark assessments in all of our subject areas, that will give us a better picture of what kind of professional learning our teachers need. Usually, when there's a deficit in score, it's usually either a curriculum issue or instructional issue, but we don't know that if we don't have assessments in some of those areas, so that'll be good to do that. All right, any questions for me?
I have a comment. I think that your focus on creating our own assessments for maybe core, non-core subjects is important, especially the direction that the state board is headed with moving toward their discussions, moving them toward only having a few graduation requirements dictated by the state and the rest determined by the local board.
Right.
We will definitely need local assessments in place before that happens.
Right. one of the nice things in this digital teaching learning grant, the program that we're using is called EduElastic. It does, in addition to language arts and math and science, it does have social studies in there, which is something we haven't had in the past. So we're excited about developing something from that and then working into health and what other subjects we can do that.
What other subjects would be included with those? I mean,
Benchmark assessments.
Yeah, besides health and social studies.
Well, I guess it depends on what you, like psychology, you know, some of the elective classes, we could do some of that too. Yeah.
Kirk, how does the ESL program fit into into the whole scheme of things here?
So those students, our second language students, take the WIDA assessment, and they take that annually. I'm not very familiar with the results on that. I think this was the first year, is that right, Craig? The first year that they've taken it. So I'm not sure how that looks. It's a lot different than what they've used in the past.
Is there a curriculum that those ESL teachers use?
Is there curriculum? Yes. In fact, there's some integrated curriculum too. Some of them have been using at the elementary, been using the Elevate, that's the ELA program, and then they've been working with the students on the writing portion of that. It depends on the level of the student. So there's definite programs at the younger level, depending on how they test and which programs that they end up using. They use Language for Learning as one of the curriculum programs that they use. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay.
Yep,
We ready
next.
for number 2?
We're ready for number 2.
And you'll be seeing me for the next couple of weeks. So, based on Board Rule 277-530, which is the educator effectiveness, we've had a policy in place. I think we put that in place 2 years ago, but it needs to be modified. So that's what I'm bringing to the board today. I hope that you've got a copy of the board policy, and I'll talk to you about what some of the changes are to that. And also, just for your background information, we've been putting together, I hope you got one of those as well, that we'll be making for all of our administrators, and then making that available online for teachers and administrators to look at too. Finally, after a few years, I think we've made it a little simpler and easier for all of our educators. The highlights of the new policy there are 3 changes, 3 main changes, and the first one is renaming it. We've used CTAPs, but felt that the language of educator effectiveness really aligns to what the state definitions and their procedures are, so there's not a confusion of what it is that we're talking about. The second one is the change from the 70-20-10% to 100%. So in the past, 70% of a teacher's evaluation was based on their observation, 20% was on student growth, and 10% was based on stakeholder input. The new board rule allowed districts to determine for themselves. Essentially what the state board rule is turning more back to our local school board, which is nice. So they allowed us to either keep the 70-20-10 or change it however we wanted. Our recommendation is to put it into just 100% of the observation tool. The reason for that, I'm not sure if you can see in your booklets, but if you look at stakeholder input really fits under.
What page?
You know, I've
44.
updated my
44
pages.
and 45.
So
34.
is it, okay.
34?
Well, and it might be on 15 on this one right here.
Oh.
So close to it, I've kind of changed mine a little bit.
Okay.
But under standard 1, let's see if I can find that one. The stakeholder input really follows under standard 1. So educator analyzes stakeholder responses, develops and incorporates plans for improvement, monitors results. So the standard 1 development says a teacher understands cognitive, linguistic, social, emotional, and physical areas of student development. And it really is a place where stakeholder input fits. So principals and teachers can use Standard 1 as their guide for stakeholder input. And as you saw in this booklet, there were some forms that they could use for stakeholder input if they chose to do that. In Canvas, we put an end of course survey that's in there that teachers can use that if they would like that type of stakeholder input. And trying to push it back locally to the schools. The reason mostly for that one is that's been our hardest one, the stakeholder input. With an N size of less than 10, it really hasn't been a valid and reliable tool when we've pushed it out from a district. So local teachers would be able to have a little more control of what their stakeholder input looks like, and they can collaborate with their principal and tailor it for how they want to use it. Some of the high schools wanted to use for accreditation the surveys that they already use, and that would be fine to do that.
Would they be able to choose like I'll do a student evaluation, or I'll do a parent evaluation, or would they have to do both of those, or?
I think they could talk with their principal about what they would use for that. I don't know if we would set a guideline for that. It's interesting that when you survey kids at the elementary, it's not as reliable as surveying students at the secondary, and it's just the opposite for parents. So parents have more of an axe to grind at the secondary, but the students tend to give you a more honest look on that.
Yeah, I've talked to you about this one before.
Yeah.
I wish we could just scrap this part.
Well, I think it's going to be easier. It's really been difficult to assess 10% based on a response to that stakeholder. So we get the results back, then teachers have to write a response to it. Then the principal has to determine based on a rubric what their score is. And it's been messy and it's been hard. It's been tedious work. So now it's just combined back into the observation tool. So it's either effective or highly effective or emerging. Okay. So that should be easier. And then the second part, the student growth, has always been a little bit difficult too. Once the state mandated that you couldn't use SAGE test scores in teacher evaluations, that kind of changed the whole game. So now in Standard 5, that standard covers assessment, and it would make sense that that would be the place where assessment is made. So teachers, in collaboration with their building principal, can set goals for student growth, either by using pre-test and post-test or other data as they want to use. SRI, DIBELS, anything else. And finally, the third one was to cover the change in compensation. So this beginning in year 2018-19 coming up, all educators have to have how they'll be compensated or not compensated. And I think, Kathy, you were on this when we originally created, weren't you on that?
I don't remember that.
Was it Terry, were you on this one? When we put this together? But the compensation comes from the cost of living. So no one's penalized from a lane change. So if provisional teachers receive a non-effective rating, they would not be compensated for cost of living, but they still could be compensated by a lane, except for the first 5 years. That's only 1 year, right? And then career educator, I'm sorry, Terry?
So the first 5 years includes all of the provisional teachers, right? Because aren't provisional teachers only provisional for the first 3 years?
That's right.
For the first three.
So we have no more provisional teachers?
No. So the provisional is, the cost of living isn't a lane, it's the cost of living. So they would not receive a cost of living if their ratings were.
So provisional teachers aren't having lane changes anyway?
They do, yeah, they don't, but they do get cost of living.
They could have lane changes, but not step changes.
Right.
Okay.
Got
And
it.
typically, that doesn't affect our district because teachers that get ineffective ratings usually get a comeback call, so hasn't really been a problem in our district. And for career educators, if you're minimally effective or ineffective, then you would not receive a cost of living and be placed on probation to get you back into effective status.
So I'm
All
just
right.
kind of curious how that would work with, you're gonna have to retain back several years' salary schedules if an employee doesn't receive a positive evaluation or return this, but, so the cost of living is still, I mean, is stripped out of their salary. We're gonna have to talk.
Fortunately, I don't work on that end of it, Dale. That's your end of it, so.
And don't lay
We just
awake
make the
worrying about
rules.
it.
We don't.
It's going to be mighty few in number, whoever, you'll be able to handle it.
The good news is we don't have anyone on that list.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that was my question as well. I could see hundreds
I
of
knew where he was
different.
going on it, so.
How, speaking of provisional teachers, how effective are our principals in taking care of provisional teachers to help them, but also to help redirect them if teaching really is something they should not continue with?
Well, I think we have a lot of supports for our provisional teachers. We have the early year enhancement program where they come in and get training, and we have specialists come in and talk to them about that. I know Craig's worked with Sarah Smith, and she goes out and does observations and helps teachers redirect their instruction so it's a little more effective to keep them in the program, keep them hired, and make them effective teachers. So I think we've done more in the past few years than we've ever done. We have a lot of support for our provisional teachers, which is nice. The world has changed, and you know, they come to our school, and sometimes life is a little harsh on them their first year of teaching, so it's nice to have the support that we can give them. Any support that we can give them is good support. So I don't think we're ending. I think, you know, we always need to find better ways to help out our new teachers.
Do we still have the mentoring program?
Yes, and
For the-
every new teacher, and that's also in the policy, every new teacher has to be assigned a mentor.
But like the monthly or bi-monthly meetings that used to happen?
Those are the tips. Those are part of that early year enhancement.
Okay.
I thought I heard another part of Terry's question. Year 3, they're still struggling and not doing well. Are our administrators making those tough recommendations that maybe you need to look elsewhere?
Yeah.
Rather than letting them get beyond that
Right.
provisional.
And the provisional can actually be extended too, so it's not hard fast at 3 years. When I was a principal, I actually extended one into 4 years to help them be a better teacher. So there is a little bit of flexibility in that one, but yes, we've had people leave the profession because they've decided that's not, you know, that's not something they expected it to be, and so it was better for them and for our system as well.
But there won't be a situation, I hope, where the teacher goes along thinking everything's fine, they get to the end of the year, and then all of a sudden they realize that they're not going to be, they're going to be let go, and they had no idea why. I know that's happened in the past, and that's something that we just don't want to happen
Right,
now
I
and in
agree
the
with
future.
that. I hope that's not the case. I just finished up all the provisional teachers today. I was looking at a report to see what their evaluation is. And I don't evaluate them, so I don't, you know, I'm just looking what the principals do. But as I looked through it, all of them were scored as effective teachers. So that's pretty great.
That's something that we really need to emphasize to the principals, is that if there is a problem, they need to be on that and not just wait and surprise
right
at the end of the year.
So I had one other concern too, and it's not anything that you talked about, but I just wondered about this. When someone has been evaluated by the principal, then, a teacher's been evaluated by the principal, then they then have 15 days to, I read that somewhere.
To receive it, or, no, they have 48 hours to have a conference about it.
Okay, I'm gonna go back and read.
And then
because
there's a
something
part in
about
there where they
15
have a
days.
discrepancy on, is that the one you're talking about? If
I
they
don't
don't
know.
agree with the policy or the rating that they were
Yeah,
given.
That's what it is.
Yeah, so they have, it can go into, I don't know what the term that I use in the policy, but they can get outside.
Yes.
All it needs to do is have somebody review it. So if, let's just say a principal evaluated a teacher at one of our schools, and that teacher didn't agree with that, they could get an outside person outside of the school, another principal, to come in and also do an observation on it
Okay, so
too.
my question about that was, do teachers know that they can do that?
Well, it's in,
It
as
kinda
far
opens
as
the
I
door.
know, that this is getting to the end of the road for teachers. I hope that they would know it. The policy's available at the beginning. If you look at the new, let's see, it's toward the first, where it's called the quick guide on there. That goes out to all the principals and teachers, that there's that beginning orientation. And in that orientation is things that they should talk to their staff about, which is includes the policy.
Okay, well, I know it
So-
opens a can of worms to let the teachers know that.
Yeah,
but it's only
It
fair.
has happened, actually. It happened, I'm trying to think if it happened a year or so ago,
Uh-huh.
that they didn't agree with the observation. It wasn't a bad observation, it just wasn't a highly effective observation, and they thought they were highly effective. But then when the option came for them to have another person come in and do an observation, then they decided not to do that they were.
Okay.
So, it has happened.
All right, well, I just was wondering if teachers knew that, because I'd never heard
Yeah.
that before. So-
What's new?
Oh, yes, and it's been a while since I've been in the classroom.
And
Okay,
it
that
says
makes
they
sense.
have 15 days, they should be held within, a conference should be held within 15 days after the observation.
And
That's in that quick guide that
Okay.
he just mentioned.
Okay, I'll read it a little more carefully before the next time.
Don't have too
Thank
many
you.
questions for me the next time, though.
I
Okay.
have a few more questions.
Oh, okay.
On page 36, it says administrators will certify every 3 years with the LEA system as a requirement to evaluate teachers. How do they do that?
Okay, which page is that one again?
36.
I think mine, I've added some different things, so I printed off, an updated one. Will you read that to me one more time?
Uh-huh. It's under the plan of assistance for career educators. Nope, not that part. It's the page just before that. Right at the bottom, before that plan of assistance for career educators starts, there's a bullet point that says, administrators will certify every 3 years with the LEA system.
Right, okay, so what we've done in the past is to evaluate teachers, we've trained our principals to evaluate based on, we watch a video of teaching, and then we calibrate based on those teaching standards. So they're all certified, and every year we certify our new administrators. Every 3 years, all administrators have to be certified for that. That brings a level of validity and reliability to the evaluation process.
That's great. I just wondered how, if that was done individually or collectively, so that they all get a feel for how they're doing it, so that they're on as level playing field as possible.
Right, and we try to do that. Our next one will be August 2nd. That'll be our training for all of what we'll do is bring all of our administrators in and calibrate, even though most of them have already been certified, but the new people will certify them at that point.
Okay.
And you're welcome to attend.
Cool. August 2nd, what time?
In the morning, starting at 8:30.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
I got one question. How are observations done? Is the teacher, are they given notice that they're going to be observed, or is it the principal go in announced or unannounced? How does that work?
It's by building and by principal.
So the principal determines that?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes they'll go in and, if you look at Standard 8 is kind of talking about planning, so in order to really do that one, they would probably have to coordinate that with the teacher, or because it would require a lesson plan to see what they were doing and to follow along. So if they were doing a summative evaluation, which they would be doing more than one, they would probably, would likely need to coordinate that with the educator. They wouldn't know what was going on with Standard 8.
Anything else?
Yeah. Does anybody evaluate the principals?
We're evaluated, it goes up higher, but they do provide stakeholder input. So we send out surveys to teachers on principals and principals on our district administration, and that goes back to our leaders here at the district office.
Well, Craig and Mike, do you evaluate them?
Do the district people set goals?
Yeah. Yes.
Everybody has their own personal goals.
Mhm. Yep.
And who checks up on you guys?
Well, Mike checks up on me, so.
Okay.
Whatever line they're in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who checks up on Mike? Okay.
And then we check upon you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a detail on that, the leadership standards have changed, will be changing beginning July. That's why mine's different. I included that on mine on the draft, which is a little bit different, so.
Okay.
And Terry's still at.
I do. Where are the parents from on the Joint Educator Evaluation Committee? Do they have former education experience? Are they from particular schools? How are they chosen?
They were chosen randomly, and some of them will probably need to be changed on our next joint. So we tried to get some from the north end and some from the south, so.
So somebody knows somebody who might be willing to serve on this committee?
That's kind of
or-
how a lot of committees work, unfortunately, is who's willing to be part of that, so.
Okay.
I think, Kathy, weren't you on that list?
I am on that list.
Yeah,
But I
I-
don't
Is
think I've
on that
ever been
list.
to any meeting.
Not this year, but last year
Oh.
when we did that.
Yeah.
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 And I saw a parent name that was on there that I knew. Her father was a superintendent. He just retired, so she was one that probably knew what was going on in the districts too.
Okay, cool. My last question, sorry I have so many. What happens when teachers, especially career teachers, which is where I see this the most, are unwilling to participate in PLCs?
Well, I'm going to give you my opinion on that, but it really focuses back on at the building principal, but they're willing to do. If you look on standard, back on standard 9. So if you look at standard 9.1, participates actively in decision-making processes while building a shared culture that affects the school and larger educational community. And standard 9.2 advocates for the learners, the school, the community, and the profession. So there is a standard to be marked on that. I would think the principal would be working with that individual teacher on that standard. Otherwise, they're not meeting that standard.
The principals might need a little reminder of that.
There's another standard that specifically mentions PLCs. And I didn't make a note of that. Oh, yeah, it's in Standard 5 where you changed, in the parts that you changed, under highly effective teachers, that talks about PLCs. So I just wondered what, I don't know if recourse is the right word, but does the building principal have with a career educator who is unwilling?
Well, I think they do have recourse on it. I think that's the whole reason these standards were put into place and this evaluation system was put into place, is to, make good teachers better, improve teachers. And if they're unwilling to make those changes, then I think there is definitely recourse on that for dismissal or probationary. I would, start at that level. And there's procedures for probation.
Okay.
And actually, I've heard some teachers complain a little bit about this when I've been in like I can't even remember
Right.
what meeting I've been in, about they are at their meetings and there are other teachers who are not going to those meetings. They're not coming early to the meetings, or they're not staying late to the meetings. So maybe just
Mike, did you have a comment? You looked like you were going to say something.
When you're asking the question about what does a principal do, it'll happen 2 or 3 times a year when Trey and I will be the principal and the teacher who's been put on probation because of something that they're not meeting at the school. So the principal has the support from the district, and they're the ones who call us and ask for that support, and we'll go help them do that.
well, we really interrogated you, but
Yeah,
we
you have.
want to learn.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's good.
really, we want to learn what's going on and what we
Sweet.
can do to help and what we should be watching for.
Sure.
We didn't make you squirm near
No.
enough, Kurt. That's fine.
Well, the state said that they were supposed to make this easier.
Not
Is
on
this
me.
easier?
Huh? Not on me.
Our teacher is this an easier
Oh, yes,
evaluation?
this is much easier.
Okay,
This
good.
is much, much easier.
Because I read this and thought, this is easier?
Yeah, it's much
It's
easier.
complicated.
All it is doing now is 100% based on the observation tool, and everything is embedded in that tool.
Which is what it was before they changed it to
Right,
the
and so
other three.
in the past, you probably heard SLO, student learning objectives.
Right.
So those don't have to be part of this any longer. There are other ways to show growth rather than that. That in and of itself will make teachers really happy. So.
Okay, all right.
Oh, yes.
I'm glad to know it's easier.
Thank you, Kurt,
Thanks.
for answering all those questions
You're
so
welcome. I
well.
was
We're
have at
trying-
least that many next
We're
time.
trying to learn more and
Yeah, awesome.
get some background information to help us, so everybody probably is going to be put on the spot a
Sounds
little
good.
bit.
I'll be back next week and the week
Okay,
after. So.
that sounds great. Thanks a lot. Good job. Okay, final legal
My
budget.
favorite.
Okay, we'll try to move things along here.
Okay,
I didn't print out for you.
5 minutes here.
Okay, let's go for it. Should have on your computer then the proposed final legal budget. Just remembering that last June, we approved the budget for this current year. That was the original budget. Throughout the year, as there's been modifications to that budget, as we've had revised revenue estimates or expenditure adjustments that had to be made, those have all been made in what we call a working budget. And that's what we've been kind of tracking throughout the year. And at this point, we bring the final working budget to the school board for their approval as the final legal budget. That'll be the budget that we're measured against as we're audited for the year and something like that in that sense. So the changes that are mainly in here, if you looked on the very first page, all of local revenue, there's very little change other than the very top line there, which is your balance brought forward from the prior year. So that's the final audited number that was included in here. And so there's a lot of things such as the unappropriated fund balance. There was a $3 million unappropriated fund balance then that was not originally budgeted for, but was then recognized after the audit was complete. That becomes one-time money, and that's why we don't really try to budget it for ongoing expenditures.
I have a question. On that first page, there's a $15,000 increase in preschool tuition.
Yes.
Is that the new grants that they got for the new preschool program? Or is that next year? Is that part of next year's budget?
This is for the year that's just ending.
Right?
And so it's been for the regular preschool program, it's been operating for years in the district. These are tuitions for non-special ed
Who pays those? I mean, how do we receive those?
They're paid, I know they're collected here at the district office, so they're brought in,
So parents pay those?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The state funds basically are adjusted for either increased revenues, because we did have quite an increase in student population, greater than we had initially budgeted for. But the other is that, if you remember the discussion about deferred revenues, so the state revenues, when they're received, are not actually recognized in our financials until they are spent for the purpose they were received. So in essence, it's carryover funds from last year in those state programs that are carried forward into the new year. And so the budget would be adjusted for those amounts. Federal funds, there's very little change in there other than a little bit in the IDA handicap and the regular Title I program also came in at $229,000 more. I know in next year's budget, we still haven't received figures from the state, well, from the feds through the state, what to expect in our federal grants. And so we just made our best estimate to build next year's budget on, and that was, I think, the case last year too at this time. Debt service, the only adjustment there, this was the bottom portion of page 3, is the balance forward again. We had estimated $800,000 carryover, not knowing, we still had 2 more months of property tax collections that had to be recognized after the budget had been built. And so the actual carryover came in $567,000 more than we had estimated. Page 4, really very little change there at all. That's in the capital outlay fund. That's pretty firm, other than the carryover came in at $5.7 million less. Again, that was trying to estimate what the final payoffs were for work completed as of June 30th. And so a lot of that is a lot of guesswork that isn't exact science quite yet. And the same thing with school lunch. Again, the only adjustment there was a little additional carryover than what was anticipated. Page 5, the one change we have there is that being self-funded now on the health and dental insurance fund. Again, that's all new, and we actually hadn't created anything in the picture or in the budget when we first started the year, because it wasn't even going to start until September. Really kind of an unknown issue as to how that was going to fall out. But that's all been now brought up to date with how we're currently operating. And then one other final adjustment is down in the Internal Revenue Fund. That is for the incremental, where we have RDA set up with communities, and we have property taxes that we set by our tax rate that are then withheld and diverted back to different development projects in communities. Those, the amount of funds that we had estimated, we had put at $720,000. We realized that our actual collections are greater than that, or what's going to be diverted, so we had to raise that budget up, or would be in violation of operating in excess of budget. So that had to be in place. That was one that we were actually written up on last year in our audit, because we didn't know the figures to what was actually diverted until after the year was over, and it was just shot in the dark as to how much we were actually going to receive. We just barely underestimated that. So, and then on the expenditure side, there are adjustments all the way through things that have occurred. This is not just general program. These are all programs included in there, of special ed, of CTE, of transportation. All of the programs included are noted in here. And so as we had carryovers in different programs, those program budgets would have been adjusted, and it would fall within certain categories depending on the nature of the program. So one one change that we would note too is the bottom of page 7 in our designated reserves. We are recommending, we talked about this earlier, that we increase the undistributed reserve from $2 million to $2.5 million. And still we're at about half of what we could actually have in the reserve.
There's
Most
a
of the
better way to
districts-
say that. We finally reached halfway.
I'm happy to be there. So that is a good positive thing. We've had some good carryovers from last year. And really, that's kind of the crux of anything major. It would be shown, I think, in these budget adjustments as a final legal budget. But if you have any questions, we'd like to talk about those. Otherwise, we'll bring this back on the 22nd for action to have that adopted as a final legal budget.
Okay, thank you.
Almost 5 minutes.
All right, so then our proposed budget.
Okay. I've set in front of you a packet. It's like this. Have an extra one too, if you want to get it online. Originally, I had, I think, 3 files in there that were just kind of key points in the budget that you could have seen, but this afternoon I actually put the full packet, which contains those 3 things plus a number of other really exciting things too, that you could read. And the most important probably is the letter on the first 2 pages that summarizes the whole thing. And so I just want to go through those quickly. So as we build this budget, these are many of the things that are key points on there. One is that it contains a 4% increase in the value of the weighted pupil unit. So it went up from $3,184 to $3,311. That was what was approved by the legislature. It's also anticipating our student enrollment that we would have a 195 student increase, or a 1.11% increase in growth. Last year we more than doubled that. But the figures we have now, it's hard to pick out students who are migrating from outside into all the other grades other than kindergarten. Kindergarten, we can pretty much hit spot on from birth records, live birth records, and been able to do that well in the past years.
Plus, there's a school opening in Providence, a new elementary, and Edith Bowen's adding a 6th grade. So we don't know the impact. But we probably won't have quite as much student growth with that happening.
Is that a good thing or not?
It all depends how you look at it. Yeah. It's not a bad thing.
Does that mean we won't have as much extra student growth like we did this year, or we won't have as much as 1.11?
Well, he's really low.
I know, because it's been really low for the last few years. So that what you're saying is we won't have as much extra increase that we don't expect?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I'll tell you for sure that that's the case come next October.
Perfect.
You're so conservative.
And if we do, we're really on a growth incline. So.
The guaranteed amounts for the voted and the board leeways went up to $39.68 per quadruple O1 tax rate that we levy in those categories. So it should generate an additional $800,000 in the voted leeway and the board leeway combined by that guarantee. And then also the Capital Outlay Foundation, we're recognizing an extra $550,000 of state subsidy that we'll receive in that category. So that's very positive. As our tax rates have gone up for debt, as our student enrollment has increased at a higher rate than most other districts in the state, all of those are positive things in the factor of how those funds are distributed. We also have other districts who are losing some of their stronghold in those in that one category. One is Alpine School District, who used to take 2/3 of the whole appropriation, and mentioned, we had a 5% increase on the salary schedule, cost of living increase, also mirroring step 1 through 4 on the teacher salary schedule with step 5, and then also covering a 5% increase in our health and accident insurance premium. Those are all built into this budget. We have also anticipated with the opening of Green Canyon High School that we'll have $1.4 million of new operational costs above and beyond what we're currently operating at now. And again, as we did last year with Ridgeline High School, we actually had a $1.5 million property tax increase to cover those increased operational costs. That was what we expressed to voters as we were going out explaining that plan, that we wouldn't open these schools on the backs of teachers, that we would actually have a property tax increase to cover those costs.
When will that truth and taxation meeting be held there?
So this will require us to go through truth and taxation.
And when will that be, do you know?
It will be on the first Thursday in August. I think it's the 3rd, if I remember right.
So don't plan any vacations around that date.
And so with that tax increase, what is going to show on the property tax notice that will go out is that the average value of a home here in our district then will be $235,358. So that's what the increase is calculated against. That $1.4 million increase will raise property taxes on that value of a home by $43.24. But there's the rest of the
I
story.
was gonna say, tell the rest of the
We
story.
will.
Don't pause right there.
No,
That's,
just so I can see their eyebrows raised. Okay. So in setting the property tax rate, there's a couple things. One is the basic rate, which is a levy that all school districts levy across the state. That generates a certain amount of dollars, a different amount per student in every district. But the value, guaranteed value, the weighted pupil unit is the guaranteed value you'll receive them for a student. So what you don't receive in local revenue by the basic rate, you then receive the difference of that in state subsidy. So that rate is still yet to be set. We have to wait till every county in the state has all their records up to stuff to know their total assessed value before that can be established. But they've said that will be in place prior to our meeting on the 22nd. So we should have a full picture when we meet then. Know what we got. But there was, after the legislative session was completed, an estimate was put together by the State School Board and the Utah State Tax Commission, where they had estimated that rate to be a 001596. So that's what I built everything on right now, is just on that estimate, and it'll be adjusted then when we have a final number. The certified tax rate is the tax rate that will, in essence, generate the same number of property tax dollars that were collected the year before. And so, as that is calculated, if we were to have everything the same, we would have a rate of 007832. That's what's considered the certified tax rate. And anything above that then is considered property tax increase that requires a truth and taxation hearing. So with property in the county, there's been, again, probably about a third, I think, of the property in the county has been reassessed on its taxable value. And so that has raised the total value of property in the county by 4.32%, just by that alone. And so what that does, with that growth in the tax base, that requires us to lower our tax rate. So that's why the certified tax rate is so much lower, is because now we have a larger base to spread that same number of dollars across. We do, however, have $132 million of new property coming onto the tax rolls. So that is new growth, and we can claim additional property tax receipts on that property as an amount above and beyond what we received the year before. So that also helps. So the rate that we're proposing that we levy for next year is a 008166. And so that, like we say, is in excess of the certified tax rate. The increase is that $43.24 on a $235,000 home. So the only increase we're really looking at is in that board local levy to raise the $1.4 million. Everything else is right in line with the certified tax rate. Now,
Dale, let me interrupt you right there and make sure I understood this. Before, you said that the average home was $42 that are.
yeah, the value of the home is $235,000, and the tax increase on them would be $43.
But before that, it was 42, and then after you figure everything in, it's gonna be 43, so it's a raise of $1 when we, if I understood that right, is that what it's gonna
If I
raise?
said 42, I was wrong. It's $43.24
It's 43.
is what the increase would be on a $235,000.
It's right there.
And if we didn't have that truth in taxation, what would it be? Any idea?
Then it would be, the taxes on it.
Yeah, on the house.
I don't have what the total taxes would be, but it'd be $43.24 less than with the increase. But let me give you the rest of the story.
Yeah,
I was
it's
gonna say,
gonna be
Very last
good.
line
It's gonna be
on that
good.
page says that now if we take the total tax rate, the 008166, if we compare that to the tax rate that we levied this past year, and that rate is back here, it's actually a lower tax rate that we're looking at assessing next year than what we are assessing this current year. So if your home is the same value this year as it was last year, you are actually gonna see a property tax decrease of $3.24.
That's what I was after.
Okay, there you go.
That's what I was after.
Yeah, so they would actually be $3.24 less than what property taxes you paid this year. But because of the definition of the certified tax rate, this is a tax increase, so you have, in all our publications, we have to measure what the tax rate would have been next year with all the factors that are involved in there, rather than what tax rate we levied last year compared to what we're looking at levying.
So this is where Sean can help us out in the news.
So that's where some education has to go.
Get the word
to the
out.
public. And the ones who will come to the truth and taxation are the individuals who were in that group of property owners that had their property reassessed, and so their value maybe went up 10%.
Who decides that? Who decides that their
That's the
property?
County assessor's office.
county.
It's
And we
not
never
us.
know when that is. It's
No.
just a rotation.
It's just random.
Some, it's actually, we've had people come in here say, my property taxes are double. And we're saying, look at the value that the county assessors put on your property. That's what's caused the tax increase. A lot of times we get blamed for the whole increase, but in reality, our portion might be very small.
So do we have to have truth in taxation if they're gonna be charged less?
Yes. Yeah,
Because
it's, the issue is, it's what the tax rate, what the taxes would have been, okay? And so, that when the tax bill was first written, that wasn't written that way. About 3 or 4 years into the process, Howard Stevenson realized that that was a way that districts, or anybody was saying it isn't a tax increase, because to the person who's paying, there's no tax increase. But there would have been a tax decrease had we not done what we are doing.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So all in all then, the preliminary budget that we're proposing totals $205,627,970. But that represents a 9.25% decrease from the current budget here for the 2016-17 school year, which was $226.5 million. And that decrease is mainly because of the expenditure of general obligation bond funds for building these new high schools and the other building projects that we have going on. So actually, the total budget is down $21 million. And that's why.
Okay, so if anybody asks us at the airport what our budget is, for the year. It's almost 206 million is what we're working on for the next year.
Have to guess.
We don't have to try and guess. Okay. All right. Is that?
So I
Oh,
have all the
okay.
detail if you want to go through there. The booklet then takes, just following that letter then will be the actual budget that's being proposed for adoption. Again, next time we meet, it will be adjusted slightly then for that basic levy as to what property taxes that generate. It won't change our overall budget at all, because if it's a higher rate, then that means that we probably get less state revenue and more local revenue. If it's a lower rate, it's the opposite. But in total, it's still gonna be that $205 million. It just depends on which pocket the funds come out of.
Gotcha.
And the only thing that would affect that is if we had a large increase of students.
Right, and those adjustments will come next year.
Yeah,
as we have,
when we get 'em.
and that'll work through that working budget, just like we had in past years.
Thank you, Dale. I really like this letter here, written out in words, because
Yes.
for me, words make more sense than the numbers do.
Yes, Dale, that was really good.
That's good. Yeah, thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Good job. Really great job. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move along. I think Carolyn changed our board meeting schedule today, so all of the information on that is correct. You can look at that and see, and I'll check it out later again too to make sure that has been changed. There was one little thing that wasn't quite right, and I left a message for her, but
Yeah, she took the December 21st one off.
okay. All right, and then we also had a couple of other little things there, like the April 15th or April 12th. Yeah, she changed it.
She changed them all.
Okay, all right, okay.
What was the thing you said she missed? What did
Excuse
she
me?
miss? The 20, is it December?
It was the
21st?
April 12th,
Oh,
because it was April 5th, but that's spring break.
But we also had one scheduled on December 21st that she
And-
took
oh,
off.
yeah, that's the one we took off, December 21st.
December 21st.
Mhm.
I was thinking on April 12th, we talked about moving it because you weren't
It
gonna
was
be able to make
October
it.
12th.
Oh, was that October?
Yeah, so the
No, it was
October one stayed
October.
the same.
Oh, maybe that's right. Maybe I let her straight.
We
Yeah.
left
Well, we got it
October.
straightened out. We got it straightened out.
It's fixed on
Okay,
here.
so that's fixed. All right, Superintendent. The information you gave us was really fun to read.
Okay, yeah, and I don't know if you have any questions, but that you have the CCSD art packet for school board. That has the 8 bullet points. There's no reason to go over each of them, and you have the appraisals also online. And I think a suggestion letter. That suggestion letter is that we still have some art that could be restored. It's probably worth investing in, and I will certainly look into that. I think in a nutshell, you could say that this art that we have in our district was there were gifts, there was a fundraising project in the early 1900s where kids gave 10 cents, and then there were some federal art that was given to us. So an art committee got together, cleaned up most of it, sold some to get some money to take care of it. We now have most of the valuable art hanging in these 2 buildings. And I don't know if that meets the intent of that art committee saying that the art should be available for the kids and patrons of the district. So we do have some of the art. When Ridgeline opened up, we put some of the art into their library and a couple other places. I'm willing to do the same for Green Canyon, and we could spread it out to the other 2 high schools too. It probably would get more visual looks than it does here in the district office. But the discussion, I think, has come up in the past. Would we ever sell it? Or what would we do? And those discussions have taken place in the past. We did at one time try to see if we could get somebody to buy the art and then donate it back to us for a tax write-off. That didn't go very far. So we have right now a very, very nice collection of art. And if you wanted to have a discussion sometime in the future about what happens to it or what eventually would be the final disposition of it, we could have that discussion.
Okay. Randall, do you have any questions you want to ask?
No, I think he got all the information.
So for your constituents who had concern about,
Yeah, I'll let him look at it.
okay. Anybody else have any concerns, comments? Do you like the idea of us keeping the art in the district?
Especially getting them out so people can enjoy it.
Okay.
I think that's something that we need to do, not just keep them. I mean, it's okay, people can come here, but there are a lot more people in high schools than
Oh, yeah, I know that. The one recommendation they made, and I haven't been down and carefully looked at the piece we have down in the courthouse, but apparently there is a tear in it, and we need to get that fixed.
It's in the courthouse, but we own it.
Yeah, we own it. Yeah, it's in their historic courthouse, and it's the picture of the mountain and the mountain men, and they thought it represented, and it's probably getting more visual looks there than it would in any of our places, but yeah, we've got it, and we've got a sign underneath it telling whose it is. On loan, we have paperwork on it, but yeah, they asked if they could have that, and we got, in return for that, we got the Brigham Young painting over in the Greenville room, and that was just rolled up and sitting downstairs, and it's, if you look at the appraisal of that, you'll understand that we got that cleaned up and framed for letting them have that, and then we got a G clay of that mountain man one that's hanging over there, so.
Thank you.
The,
I have a
the
question.
painting on page 17 in the middle, the Harwood, is the one that hung in my media center at North Cache, undiscovered for many, many years.
I think this one was at North Cache, the one that was up here, isn't it?
This Indian one?
Uh-huh.
I don't know where it was at. I
Because
don't.
when I first started teaching there, it was just so dark, you could hardly see what it was. And when I saw it here, I thought, oh my gosh, that's really quite beautiful.
That was the way this one was, the time they took it and cleaned it.
And then Chad Downs tells the story of when it was laying out on a table over here, that a maintenance man came along and was looking at it and started flicking some of what he thought was spots on the paint, and some lady had to tell him, those are stars, young man, don't be flicking them off.
Oh my
So,
Okay.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
Not regarding art, but like, these are great attachments that would be really great to be able to access when I'm thinking about it again, like in a year or so. So are the attachments in board docs only on the meetings, or do they go someplace else? Like, are they stored in a library where we can actually access them on board docs?
That's a great idea.
Because, or
Let's
do
not
I
try to
just
find
have to
some
try and
things.
remember what meeting it was that I
can't find
remembered
it.
seeing, which isn't good, because I can't remember.
yeah, I think they can go up to the library.
would be
but
Well, it would
Awesome.
make
it
sense
has
to have them put in the library for future access when we're thinking about things more generally, not specifically at a meeting.
Because I tried to look for something and I can't find it when I go back. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard.
If we could just put it with the date and maybe
Whatever
what
you
it was.
decide.
Yeah, there's quite a few best practice webinars going on with board docs all the time. I would recommend Carolyn attending some of them, that will help her figure out some of those nuances of the program and how to store those.
Okay.
Do we need to approve the funding for that? I make a motion.
We can cover it.
Okay. And I had another question while we're off subject. Like, can Sean get onto board docs and follow along at these meetings, or, okay. And anybody else who wants to can? Okay. All right. Any more discussion or comments on the art collection? We'll go quickly to the land and building acquisition. There's been some questions raised about that.
Yeah, there's a question of, well, just wanting to make the school board aware of different parcels that we currently own with the school district that are available to us. And so I put these together. We can just go through them real quickly, and they're alphabetical. So first one is Hyde Park. We have a 9.77 acre parcel that is kind of in the northeast corner of Hyde Park. And if you look at the picture, I have those pictures in front of me. If you've got those. If you look at that, it's a area right now that has two accesses on it. One coming off 300 north, and then one also coming on the other side off 450 north at 300 east. And so it's there's a canal that runs along the western perimeter of that piece there. Be an excellent place for an elementary, though it does have some slope in the ground, and so it would require a bit of terracing perhaps to turn that into an elementary school, which would reduce the amount of usable space a little bit. But that's one that I think currently has, the intent is for that to be a future Hyde Park Elementary.
Alan, is that behind your house?
It's up the street.
Okay.
It's up across the canal, about half a block, and then there are a bunch of trees right there, and if you look through
If you
those
know where
trees,
Susan
that's where it
Matson
is.
lives, it's right behind her.
Behind Ray Thornley.
So is there enough frontage there on 3rd, 300 North to have adequate transit for buses and that? I don't even know what the requirements are, but.
I don't know, it's quite a wide lane that comes through there.
Is it?
It looks
Okay.
like it's a
quite a-
lot wide almost.
Yeah, right now vehicles are passing in between two large areas of trees.
Okay.
And remove a bunch of deer.
Okay, the next one
And the
is
next
in
one
Hiram.
This is right just east of Mountain Crest High School. We purchased a 19-acre parcel there, and we have currently driver's ed range is out there, and we're also parking buses and cars also. But there's still, 15 acres, already over that is unused right now. That's one we're gonna have to discuss
Yeah,
as to what
probably
future
good land to
options might
maybe divest of and let it go. I don't see anything in the future that we would put there.
Okay,
But we'll have that discussion later.
all right. Then another one in Hiram.
On the west side in Hiram, just below South Cache, there's a 10.2 acre piece that has been intended to be a future site for an elementary school. If you look at the picture there, it's in a nice cul-de-sac. You've got the main road there of 200 north. That is the main road that goes between Hiram and over towards Wellsville. And so it has good access both on the coming off of Second North and then down into cul-de-sac on Fifth West. You have that access there. But this is currently just being farmed to keep the weeds down. All we're really asking for them to do is keep that clean for us. So that parcel is available.
That really looks like an awkward boundary on the south of that. On the south end of that, yeah. I bet there are weeds growing in that corner right there. Because that doesn't have lines on it. That would be annoying for the neighbors.
Oh, and then we have some in Newton.
Then
Did that,
area like this in Newton.
hold on just a second, Dal. Did that subdivision, 250 homes or whatever it was in Hiram, get approved?
I don't know.
Do you know, Roger,
There's
about that
lots
east
To the
fence
west
that they
is-
were talking about?
I don't know about the west, but the one to the east is
Okay.
by Canyon. They're building roads there now, plus the one south of Mountain Crest on the main road. They're also going ahead with that.
Would we need a new elementary up on that east end?
Yeah, more than likely.
So we probably wouldn't.
But
want to-
you wouldn't want to build one right next to Canyon. So that's the piece of property we're.
So build one lower and then divide them up.
We can have, future discussion. We just don't know how, there's been a subdivision right across from Canyon that's been sitting there for, I don't know how long. And so I don't know how quick these are gonna develop. Yeah.
But the one across from Canyon has started now. They're working on that.
And that's the one I understood was gonna go.
So there's one on the south of Canyon and the east of Canyon
So,
going.
yeah.
Okay.
There's not a development in Newton, just so you know.
So we had this piece for a few years, quite a few years actually, 10.8 acres. It's right on the south end of town. All of these pictures, top of the picture is north, so you can orient yourself. But you can see Center Street coming in. Center Street's where the old fire department used to be, isn't it? And so you come in, hit the last road of Third South, and you find the corner or the upper piece. So there's that parcel that's 13-034-0023 is the 10.8 acre piece that we own there.
We've had that as an incentive for population growth in the west side of the valley for a long time. Hasn't done what it was supposed to have done. So
Oh, is that what it was supposed to do?
that's what it was supposed to have done, yeah.
In Nibley, the current site of Heritage Elementary, we originally purchased 27, we did reply 27.6 acres. The elementary itself is using up about 10 acres of that 27 acres, so there's 17 and a half acres right now that's still available on that parcel. When that was first purchased, it was intended that there would be an elementary and a middle school constructed on that same site. And so that's something down the road as a possibility, a site for future middle school. That could be down the road, but that property's available. In Smithfield City, just above Skyview, going to the east, and just on the other side of 6 South, which is the road on the south side of Skyview. We own 25 and a half acres, I think there. That's currently just being farmed. It was intended at the time that would be a future middle school site. With the discussion back as to why did we ever build a high school in Richmond when you transport all the population from Smithfield and North Logan, Park and everything up to a smaller community. That's what, we're still living with that decision. But we have a large, nice North Cache campus there that,
Needs to be used.
yeah, so.
You're aware that there's the big dairy farm there with the open manure pits just right south of that piece of land? That's
Oh,
pretty
it's south
smelly.
and east a ways.
Huh?
It's south and east a ways.
That smell is still there.
Smells like
Yeah,
honey.
Just give me a little knowledge,
Yeah.
okay?
And then the last parcel, he's talked about
Oh,
desiring to do that.
that would be better.
He owns the property that's just directly across the street from Skyview to the south. And he would love to swap that property for this piece here. I don't think it's quite the same acreage, but it still might be sufficient for what we would need, or if we need to provide additional parking for the high school, that would also be a possible option to consider. But nothing has ever been pushed on that idea. The last one is in Wellsville, which is the site of our old Wellsville Elementary. It's been abandoned at this point. We're just currently using it as a storage location. I understood there was about 4 semis of furniture that was supposed to be leaving from there last week. I never did hear if it actually happened, but I think that was kind of the intent. So a lot of the furniture that was coming out of the other schools, as we were making these transitions, that was going to be donated down, I think, into Central and South America. Mexico, I think, is really where it's going. And so we're working to be able to eventually be in a position to, the plan right now is to demolish the facility. We have a reserve set aside to cover that cost if needed. And, but there's still time, I guess, if the American Festival
Opera?
desire to take control or possession, not possession, but actually use the building, lease it from us. And that would save us the cost of demolition, but they'd have to get that approval through Roseville City before we move ahead. So it's kind of in their court if they want to push that forward. But as of right now, the intent would be that it would be demolished. Probably would be, I don't know if we'd have that in time for next fall to have that done, or maybe the following spring. So it's really not very useful.
Are these the only parcels of land that we have that aren't being currently used?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with that property, if you look at it, we own where the school is sitting in that parcel, the any number 0060. But we also own the parcel that's just to the left of that. We have, it's like a portable classroom on there. That's the one that ends in the 0059. So those two parcels are what we actually own as a school district. And then we've been using the city park that's below that to the south as part of our green space for PE and whatnot. So I think the idea right now is that we would demolish the building and clean up the site. We'd still retain control and ownership of that property in case something down the road, but I think probably allow Roseville City to be able to use that as extension of their park.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful for all of us. Anybody have questions on it? Okay, I appreciate that you're planning ahead, that you have things.
See, that all happened when we had the bond that was for 60 million. And they indicated that we ought to be planning for the future, and they said we ought to be buying property. That's where all that was bought. This last bond, we didn't have any room to do things like that. We had to just concentrate our efforts to building buildings. So it was a great investment, yeah.
I think it was wise, so.
How's Cash High coming, Steve?
They're down there digging in the dirt. I don't know if they've started
Put some
going out.
foundations up,
Foundation is up?
some of it.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else we need to?
My concern is if we get rid of the piece by Mountain Crest, where are we gonna put the growth from the south?
Well, we would hope to just trade property with somebody that it makes it in a little better location for us to have the property. So we would be looking for transfers.
So Karchner owns everything to the west, and Karchner owns the 60 acres or whatever on the highway going south from Clausen's Dairy that he's starting to subdivide now.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility that he would do
He's
that?
already approached us.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, all right, I'll just read this little quote I've been hanging on to. I had a letter from a former board member to President Clinton about his interest in being a school board member, but it's a little lengthy, so I'll save it for another time. And this one, I think, kind of goes along with our mission statement. Is stated by Jean Page, and she said, "The goal of education is not to increase the amount of knowledge, but to create the possibilities for a child to invent and discover, to create men and women who are capable of doing great things." And I think, that's what our goal is prepare these children for the future so that they can be great citizens and great contributors and have that, not just knowledge, but have the ability to think and reason and create and be able to move us forward. And just last of all, thank you so much. This was a long meeting, I know, and we'll try to keep it shorter, but it's nice to get some information to help us. Okay, Superintendent.
I'm gonna hold mine too.
Okay.
But I did find the guy who started me handing out starfish, I thought maybe he was dead, but he just wrote a book.
Oh.
And it's got a little story in here called The Classroom Hell. It's only about a one paragraph, but I'll save it. It's worth reading.
Okay.
So,
Well, we've got something to look forward to
Yes,
next
you do.
Thursday then.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I second it.
All in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, see you next Thursday, a week from Thursday.
When is it? Is it